The Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and they're having their summit, their 2015 summit, not in London, not in Berlin, not in New York, but in Africa. So let's find out why, and let's find out what's happening at the summit now with the two big guns from RICS. It's Sean Tompkins, the CEO, and also Louise Brooke-Smith. And they're in our Johannesburg studio. Louise, Sean, thanks very much for joining me. Louise, start with you. How's the summit going?
Lindsay, it's going really well. It's the first time that the RICS has been to Africa. We've had a governing council meeting. We followed it today with our Africa Summit, which is looking at the future vision of Africa's real estate market. So we've brought together academics, professionals, the industry, market leaders to share best knowledge, to share ideas, because there's so much going on here. We're really excited about being here.
Sean, what's the mood? I mean, your colleague there sounds very, very enthused. Is that enthusiasm pervading throughout the summit?
It is, and I think it's probably pervading throughout sort of real estate markets around the world. I think every government in probably every country around the world is dealing with the challenges of population growth, urbanisation. And real estate and those challenges are very real for Africa, and everybody now is looking to chase capital to be able to invest in their built environment, infrastructure and real estate, and Africa and its economy is well placed to really take a slice of that global capital.
Yeah, Louise, there's different types of real estate in South Africa. For example, if you land at Cape Town International Airport, you drive and you see some RDP housing some very smart looking, quite attractive looking houses that have been built by the government for people that haven't had formal accommodation for so many years. And yet at the same time, there are shacks galore, and there's shack land that extends for kilometres. And you just drive out behind me now and you'll find multi-million-dollar apartments. So there's real estate and there's real estate. So it's difficult probably to tackle all different facets.
It is difficult. That's where the professionalism comes in, because it is a balancing act. It's being able to address the economy, it's being able to address inward investment to make sure that all parts of the community can benefit and can add to that wealth. So yes, real estate isn't just housing. It is looking at the infrastructure that goes behind it and serves and services housing, but it's also the economy, it's also commerce, it's also office development, and in South Africa in particular, it's retail development.
Yeah, indeed. The office side of things is an important one in South Africa, and in South Africa you tend to get these nodes. You get one area that's very fashionable, yes. Becomes too fashionable, the infrastructure can't cope, and then that node then moves along. You see that in a place called Rosebank at the moment, yes. In Johannesburg, just around the corner from you. Sean, what sort of speeches have you had? Can you give us an idea of any highlights of the summit up until now? Any really good topical talking points?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that were really, really topical. I think that the first bit is a recognition that Africa is now taking its place on the world stage, and is being talked about in many parts of the world as somewhere where the world needs to be looking in terms of real estate, infrastructure and construction, and that message is coming through, because we've got delegates from North America, from Europe, from Asia, as well as from across Africa. So Africa's definitely getting its share of the conversation. I think secondly, the challenge for Africa, as we're seeing, particularly from the investment community, is that compared with other parts of the world, it can lack transparency. The ethics are not quite where investors would like. But the other really challenging bit is that there aren't the professionals in the market just yet who are working to the same consistent international standards that would be seen in other places. So there is a growing demand, and I think that's what's coming from the conference, that Africa now can respond to this, and with an organisation like the RICS, a professional body, we can help bring those standards and train the future professionals in Africa.
Yeah, that's a massive job. I mean, you'll have to have a permanent presence here, of course. And talking about that, you're talking about 3 regional hubs, Louise, the key regional markets in sub-Saharan Africa, namely South Africa, Kenya and Ghana. And you go on to say that the rationale is that South Africa is a strategic gateway for RICS's growing its activities in Africa. Kenya is rapidly becoming a strategic location for organisations wanting a regional base in East Africa, while Ghana is your choice for a regional hub in West Africa. You've chosen the hubs. Now, what's next?
Well, we've chosen the hubs after an awful lot of research and assessment of the marketplace, because we want to be able to respond to needs. But more importantly, we want to be able to work collaboratively with existing organisations and regulatory bodies, so we can add to the experience and the expertise in those particular areas. And we want to use those 3 hubs as centres of excellence, if you like, to be able to then work within the greater regions. We started looking at this 2 years ago through a piece of research with the University of Cape Town. We actually looked at more countries, but looking at some of the criteria really pointed towards those 3 areas first. But I should stress, we're not stopping there. We want to be able to work proactively and very collaboratively with similar organisations such as the Ghanaian Institute, the Quantity Surveyors here in South Africa and also in Kenya. There are similar organisations in other countries, Nigeria, Tanzania, and we're talking to them all the time to be able to build up relationships and work with them to introduce that professionalism and learn from what's happening in their countries.
Louise and Sean, thanks very much for coming in this lunchtime. It's really good to see people coming from overseas and obviously being enthused not only about South Africa but also the African continent. That's Sean Tompkins, the CEO of the RICS, and joining him was his colleague, the president of the RICS, that's Louise Brooke-Smith.